Today's the day, da-da-da-da, the kind of day, da-da-da-da, to find out who is the greatest heavyweight champion in the history of the UFC. That's right, today is the day. UFC 252 is going down in just a few hours. If you haven't gone on to ESPN.com and bought the pay-per-view for tonight, you should do that right now. Go do it right now. Pause the video. I'll wait. Go on. Go do it. Go buy the UFC 252 pay-per-view. Miocic against Cormier 3. Go on. Have you done it yet? No? Okay, I'm going to keep waiting. Alright, you've done it? Cool. Why did I wait? Because if you don't buy this pay-per-view, you are making a big-time mistake. Why? Because, as I said, it is a trilogy fight. How often is the headliner of a pay-per-view a trilogy? You don't get trilogies that often. The last trilogy that I can remember was the co-main event to UFC 199, which was where the main event was Luke Rockhold against Michael Bisping 2. But for the UFC middleweight championship. But the co-main event was Dominic the Dominator Cruz against the California Kid Uriah Faber 3 for the UFC bantamweight championship. Oh, if you have never heard the term trilogy before, in the UFC it means a third fight. Now, why are Miocic and Cormier having a third fight, you ask? Well, let me explain. Before UFC 226, when Miocic defended the heavyweight championship against Daniel Cormier, who at the time was the UFC light heavyweight champion, the light heavyweight champion had never moved up to heavyweight to challenge for the heavyweight belt. So this was the first. So Stipe probably was underestimating Daniel Cormier because, you know, if you're the defending heavyweight champion and you have this guy who is just so happens to be the light heavyweight champion coming up to challenge for your belt, you're going to be like, okay, you're the light heavyweight champion. You're not going to be able to hang with me. And it did look like that early on. Like, Stipe was moving, and he was landing good punches on Cormier. But then, for some reason, early in the first round, Stipe became kind of stagnant, and he just started standing in front of Cormier, which allowed DC to land these big shots. Now, of course, the finish came when they were close together, almost in the clinch, and Stipe had his hands down, and Cormier was able to come over the top with the big right, and, you know, he got the knockout. Now, of course, a big part of that is the eye pokes, and Stipe has not been able to let go of that since their first fight. You know, in a lot of the interviews, if you watch them, you'll hear Stipe continuously reference the eye pokes. And that happens when Cormier reaches his arms out like this, he kind of flicks his hand out. And, you know, with how light those gloves are, I have gloves right here. They're MMA. I think they were actually signed by Stipe. I don't know why I don't have these hanging up. I should actually do that. There we go. Sorry for that excursion. But with how light those gloves are, when you flick your hand out like that, you're bound to have your fingers extend. And it must have kept hitting Stipe in the eyes. And Cormier says he's gotten better with it. I don't fully believe him, but it is what it is. Now, we move to UFC 241 because what happened with this is, after Cormier beat Stipe, I guess Stipe was offered other fights, but he didn't take them. And Cormier pretty much said, "Oh, Stipe, you're being a little petty about losing to me, and like you're being a little brat in a way." Now, Cormier would defend the heavyweight belt on short notice against Derek Lewis at UFC 230 in the main event at Madison Square Garden. Cormier easily won that fight. I believe it was by submission in the second round, if I remember correctly. There we go. Wanted to fix my hat a little bit. And then Stipe and Cormier met at UFC 241. Now, for most of that fight, Cormier was winning. He landed a takedown on Stipe in, I believe it was the first round, and was able to control Miocic for almost 3 minutes. But then, I don't know if somebody in Stipe's corner told him to do this, or if it was just instinctual, but late in the fourth round, you just see Miocic start going wham, right to the body shot. Like, let me show you. Like, I don't have somebody else to do this with, but if I'm Cormier, Miocic would come in and go bang, like that. And so, if you get punched in the gut like that, you're going to react. And so, once Miocic saw that, he's like, ooh, this is working. So he kept doing it over and over and over again until DC ultimately crumbled. And Stipe was able to regain the heavyweight championship, which, again, he lost to Cormier at UFC 226. Let me just say for a minute, I will stand by this particular statement until the day I die. Was it the Cleveland Cavaliers who brought home the first championship in 2016? No, it was not. Was it the Lake Erie Monsters, now called the Cleveland Monsters, who brought home the first championship in 2016 when they won the Calder Cup in 4 games against the Hershey Bears, AHL affiliate of the Washington Capitals? No, the first championship in Cleveland was brought home in the year 2016 by Stipe Miocic when he defeated Fabrizio Verdum at UFC 198 from Curitiba, Brazil. When what happened was, I don't know why, but Verdum decided to come forward and try and start wailing on Stipe. Miocic parried one of Verdum's punches to the side, and then he used a short right arm and just went bang right to the side, and Verdum just went down. And thus Miocic captured the UFC heavyweight belt. And then, later in September, he defended the heavyweight championship for the first time against Alistair Overeem. Where was that? Where was that UFC pay-per-view? UFC 203. Let me think. Where was UFC 203? I was there with my friend Austin Johnson. I don't remember. Oh, I do remember. It was here in Cleveland. At the time, the arena was called Quicken Loans Arena. It was at Quicken Loans Arena. Of course, now it's called Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. But that was one of the best days, one of the greatest days of my life. Oh my God. Now, was the atmosphere a little bit over the top because it was Stipe in the main event? Yes. But even for the other fights, like Fabrizio Verdum against Travis Brown in the co-main event, CM Punk against Mickey Gall, Uriah Faber against Jimmy Rivera, those were the fights on the pay-per-view. There was Jessica Ai against Bethe Correia. That was a good fight. And there were others. And the crowd was great for each fight. And as we got closer to the main event, the crowd seemed to get better and better and better and louder and louder and louder. When this pandemic is over, I don't know how, but I hope you're listening, Dana White. Bring the Octagon back to Cleveland, Ohio. I don't care if it's for a pay-per-view. I don't care if it's for a UFC fight night. Bring the goddamn Octagon back to Cleveland, Ohio. You saw the atmosphere we had for UFC 203. Why haven't you brought the Octagon back since? Now, I get, during this period of time, we're in a pandemic. So you're having to do what you can. But still, since UFC 203, Chicago has hosted multiple pay-per-views. Madison Square Garden has hosted multiple pay-per-views. I'm not directly comparing Cleveland to Manhattan. I'm just saying. Atlanta has hosted multiple pay-per-views. Dallas has hosted multiple pay-per-views. My point is, since Cleveland, you've had multiple cities host multiple events. Like I said, Dallas hosted UFC 211, which was Stipe's second title defense against Junior Dos Santos in a rematch of their amazing 5-round fight back at UFC Fight Night Phoenix. But then you had Dallas host a pay-per-view again for UFC 228, which was Tyron Woodley against Darren Till for the welterweight belt, when Tyron Woodley won that fight because of a choke, which I still can't believe, because Tyron Woodley wins most of his fights by going bang with that right hand and just knocking people out. I mean, that's how he won the belt, was by just cranking that right hand right to Robbie Lawler's skull. Yeah. Which, that was UFC 201. And where was that one? Atlanta. And then UFC 236 was where? Atlanta. So, all I'm asking is, once this pandemic is over and fans are allowed back in arenas and stadiums, whatever, bring the UFC Octagon back to Cleveland. I want to go to another UFC event. I had such a great time at UFC 203. The stuff outside was amazing, although it was ruined because there was a thunderstorm, and they had to bring in the crowd fairly quickly, but that's okay. And there was just a buzz, like the UFC. There was just a buzz that night, like, holy crap, the UFC is here in Cleveland. And again, I feel like there was extra emotion and stuff in the air because it was Stipe defending the heavyweight belt. And he's from Cleveland. He trains strong style in Independence. And he is a firefighter. Yeah. But anyway, getting back to the original point of this video, UFC 252. So, we need to have a trilogy. Because, again, Cormier won the first fight at UFC 226. And then Miocic won the second fight at UFC 241. Now, the interesting thing about those two previous fights was that neither one was by decision. Both came via a TKO. Like I said, in the first fight, Cormier and Miocic were in the clinch, and DC was able to come over the top with the big right hand, which knocked out Stipe. Now, I think that surprised Miocic, because going into that fight, I bet he thought, oh, Cormier's not really a stand-up guy, he's only a wrestler, so I have the advantage. Yeah. And so DC surprised him. And then in the second fight, I think it was Cormier who who was surprised by Stipe's endurance, because as the fight kept progressing, it did look like Stipe was actually getting stronger, whereas Cormier seemed to be getting a little weaker, maybe even fatigued, which is interesting. Now, go back to UFC 226 for a minute. Stipe was defending his belt against Cormier 5 months after his record-setting title defense against Francis Ngannou, who is an absolute beast. And I would not be surprised if he becomes the UFC Heavyweight Champion eventually. Not yet, eventually. Maybe, even though it was 5 months, maybe 5 months wasn't enough time for Stipe to fully heal. I don't know. I'm not trying to make excuses as to why Miocic lost that fight. Certainly not. Although Miocic still blames Cormier's eye pokes and all that. Like I've said countless times. But all I'm saying is, that was a grueling fight for Miocic against Ngannou. He had to worry about Ngannou's serious one-punch power. I mean, what got Francis Ngannou that title shot was the punch that pretty much sent Alistair Overeem's head into orbit around the earth. I'm surprised they were able to find it. If you haven't watched that, highlights from that, go watch it. It was the co-main event to UFC 218 when Max Holloway defended the featherweight belt against Jose Aldo in a rematch from UFC 212. Which, by the way, Max Holloway should be holding the UFC featherweight belt right now. The judges got that fight absolutely wrong at UFC 251 when they said Alexander Volkanovski won. And they said, and you heard Bruce Buffer say, and still the undisputed UFC featherweight champion of the world. No, it shouldn't. It was wrong. No, go back and watch that fight. I know that Volkanovski landed some takedowns, and they were quite impressive. But Max Holloway was doing more. Like, he was landing more punches overall. Now, I know in the later rounds, it was Volkanovski who landed more total strikes. I get that. I've looked at the statistics. So I know that in the later rounds, Volkanovski was landing more total strikes. I looked at that. Trust me, I have. But what I'm saying is, I feel like Max Holloway landed more total combinations. He didn't just go, one punch, okay, I'm done. He went 1, 2, 3, 4. Stuff like that. Or he would go 1, 2. Or, like, start with the left and go 1, 2. Maybe land a body shot. That's what I'm saying is, I get it. I've looked at the statistics. Alexander Volkanovski landed more total strikes in the last few rounds. I get that. But again, I feel like Holloway was the busier fighter, doing more, landing more combinations. So, I think he got robbed. Yeah. But UFC 252 is going to be so interesting. Like, Cormier is most likely going to retire after this fight. Regardless if he wins or loses. And that would be like George St. Pierre, who defeated Michael Bisping in the main event of UFC 217 to capture the UFC middleweight championship, and then I believe subsequently he retired. Although there's talks that maybe the UFC wants to do Khabib Nurmagomedov against George St. Pierre for the lightweight belt. I don't know. Speaking of Khabib, okay, let's say he beats Justin Gaethje at UFC 254, which I think he's going to. But don't sleep on Justin Gaethje. he may have a style that could be difficult for Khabib. Could be. I'm not saying it will be. I'm saying it could be a difficult matchup for Khabib. Could be. We'll have to wait and see. But let's, for the sake of this argument or discussion, whatever you want to call it, let's just say Khabib does beat Justin Gaethje, okay? What if Khabib goes, Kamaru Usman, I want to challenge you for the welterweight belt. How interesting of a matchup would that be? If you had Khabib Nurmagomedov, the current UFC lightweight champion, challenge Kamaru Usman, the current welterweight champion, for the welterweight belt. It would be such an interesting stylistic matchup because both guys want to take you down and ground and pound you. At least that's what I think Kamaru Usman does. But if you watch his last two fights, he used more of a stand-up game, like against Colby Covington at UFC 245. I don't think either guy, Usman or Covington, scored a takedown. And I don't think either guy tried to land a takedown. Which, again, is interesting because, you know, being on the ground and trying to choke you out or ground and pound you to death, I've always thought is Kamaru Usman's mindset. And then in his title defense against Jorge Masvidal, I didn't really think he utilized his takedown game either. So that was interesting. Now, it might have been because he was preparing for Gilbert Burns, and then, you know, Burns tested positive for coronavirus. So Masvidal stepped in on 6 days' notice. Thus, Usman couldn't really put together a full-blown game plan. But he did use, like, foot strikes, I guess you could call it. Or foot stomps, whatever. And that was interesting. So, we've seen some interesting techniques. Because remember, in the main event of UFC 246, Conor McGregor would get right up against Cowboy Cerrone, and he would start throwing that shoulder strike. And then, like I said, in the main event of UFC 251, Usman was using the foot stomps. So just interesting. But if you have not ordered UFC 252 yet, go do it. I don't know what you are waiting for. It starts in just a few hours. The pay-per-view starts at 10 o'clock p.m. on ESPN+. Go watch it. It's live from the UFC Apex in Las Vegas, Nevada. Although I wonder where this fight would be taking place under normal conditions. Maybe it would still be in Las Vegas. I tried to advocate that it should be here in Cleveland because both fighters seem to have a connection towards Cleveland. Because, like I said, Miocic is from Cleveland. He trains in Independence at Strong Style. But it seems like Daniel Cormier has some type of connection to Cleveland as well. Because I remember, first off, Cormier came to Cleveland and filmed some type of special program with Stipe that aired on Sports Time Ohio. And then in the post-fight show of UFC 203 on Fox Sports 1, when the UFC was still part of Fox, Cormier was asking Stipe, like, how do you feel to get the same reaction from the crowd tonight as what LeBron gets or Kyrie gets, and how do you feel to be in the same arena as our Cavaliers, our Indians, our Monsters? And I'm like, well, dude, what's your connection to Cleveland? Now, it might be as simple as, you know, that Cormier and Miocic filmed that program. It could be that simple. But I wish I had the opportunity to actually ask Cormier about that. Maybe he'll respond if somehow this video gets to him. I don't know. Weirder things have happened. Maybe this video will get to Dana White. Maybe this video will somehow get to Daniel Cormier. I don't know. Stranger things have happened. Stranger Things is a good show, by the way. I don't know why I haven't finished season 3 yet, but I haven't. I need to. Yeah. So, I cannot wait for this pay-per-view. And actually, the next few pay-per-views are going to be good for UFC. But I don't know if I'm going to buy all of them. I don't buy every pay-per-view. UFC 252, I'm definitely purchasing because, again, it's my hometown guy, Stipe Miocic, defending the heavyweight belt against another one of my all-time favorite fighters, Daniel Cormier. Sorry, DC, but I'm rooting for Stipe in this fight. Come on, he's from my hometown. And then in UFC 253, it'll be a middleweight grudge match as Israel Adesanya defends the middleweight title against Paulo Costa, and they don't seem to like each other. UFC 254 is going to be Khabib Nurmagomedov against Justin Gaethje for the lightweight belt, and they don't seem to like each other. And just a few days ago, actually, the title bouts for UFC 255 got announced, and they're both going to be flyweight title bouts, as the main event will be newly crowned flyweight champion Davison Figueiredo, sorry if I mispronounced your name, defending the flyweight belt against the current bantamweight Cody Garbrandt, and the co-main event will be Valentina Shevchenko defending her flyweight belt against, oh, I forget her name off the top of my head. Hold on 1 second. It'll be Valentina Shevchenko against Jennifer Maia. There we go. Shevchenko was originally supposed to face Joanne Calderwood, but I guess Joanne Calderwood got tired of waiting for Valentina Shevchenko or something. So instead, Calderwood accepted a fight against Jennifer Maia, and Maia beat her. So that's why Jennifer Maia is now the #1 contender. So, that's going to do it for this video. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, punch that subscribe button like a UFC fighter. We are at 270 subscribers, which is mind-blowing. We are about 30 subscribers away from 300 subscribers, which I still can't believe. So, if you have friends, tell them to subscribe to this channel. And if you haven't subscribed yourself, do it!